sides. I don't enjoy using controllers in third-person games. They're fun for driving. When it comes to actual things like combat or shooting, I know many people prefer it. I'm not one of them. When we played GTA, I would have the controller for the driving and the
Mhm.
flying and the boats. We'll talk about GTA in a minute because that's a great example. But for anything to do with moving around on foot or shooting, it's back to keyboard and mouse.
I remember that when we would play, you okay, so we take off in a helicopter, and I get in the helicopter and I'm piloting, and I go, right, I'm going to grab my controller here, Jan, and I'm grabbing my controller and I'm doing this, and it's not on. The
Yeah,
the
mine is
ti
plugged in.
the time between me last using the controller, it had gone off, and I picked it up and I was like, and Jan's like, Mikey, pull up, and I went, I am, and it's not, it's connected.
So GTA is a really interesting example. Also, hello Vertex. GTA is a really interesting example. Mikey and I played some GTA 5 together. I went through a phase of playing a lot of it
Yeah.
on the online thing, which I had to sort of cheat myself out of public lobbies because I just don't want to deal with the toxicity. And the game kind of encourages toxic behavior in a lot of its design decisions. Um, Especially when you get to higher levels and you get access to things like flying cars with missile launchers, where you're getting
The
rewards for causing
opportunity
chaos or
for
stopping people
trolling.
from
Yeah.
playing. Right, you're rewarded for trolling in a bunch of different ways. But that aside, I spoke to Mikey about actually, this is a lot of fun. We should do some missions together. So Mikey downloads it, and he hasn't played in a while, and we start playing together, and it's great.
Mm.
Except GTA 6 has been around for so long, and so many people have worked on it that
GTA
every time they
5.
rate GTA 5, GTA
Yeah.
6, I've gone back in time. I had my DeLorean. It was a very awkward moment with my mother in a car. No, GTA 5 has been around for so long, and they've added so many mechanics and so many types of vehicles that the controls aren't consistent. So we were doing a mission. We're trying to do the whole mission stealth in under 10 minutes. It was this lovely little island invasion snatch and grab thing, which you can do loud, but that's very hard. But stealthy is really, really fun.
Yeah.
And we go right to the end. And we've picked an exit where there's a speedboat waiting for us at their boathouse, which is covered in guards. And we've snuck our way around, and we haven't been caught, and we've used silencers and popped guards in the back of the head when no one's looking, and hidden them in the bushes, and done all kinds of stuff. And then they spot us. We've got to go now because we are just not armed to survive an actual full frontal assault. So we jump into the water and we start swimming for the boat. And we swim for the boat. We swim for the boat. We swim for the boat. We're underwater. They can't shoot us properly. And we surface from the water and we press the button to get in the boat. But the button to get in the boat is the same as the button for dive underwater. So we both just dive under the boat.
It would have been better having the music being yakety sax at that point.
And this happens like 3 or 4 times where one of us is in the boat and the other one's trying to get in.
I think at
And we
one
just
point I pressed the button and I got out the boat again. I was like, no.
It was so
No.
like that was a moment where the controls being so what's the word I'm looking for? Unintuitive. Just wrecked the game. I mean, it was hysterically funny in hindsight, but at the time that was really frustrating.
I think I recall playing GTA like when I first got back into it after a while, I would inadvertently press the get out the car key.
Yeah.
You'll be driving along as like, I've done it in a helicopter. I mean, Jan did not appreciate me vacating at 2,000 feet.
Actually, no, that wasn't the worst one. The worst one was when the lobby disconnected one of us who was piloting a helicopter. The other one was stuck in the passenger seat as this thing was hurtling towards the ground. That was no fun at all.
It was lots of fun.
I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about with controls, and there's two kind of. I'm trying to form these phrases because I have an idea of what I want to talk about, but it's not like I've written a book on it.
Can
I
I
don't
can
have
I
that.
zoom out for a moment and talk about game
You
design
have
when
the
it
camera
comes?
controls. Go for it.
So when it comes to game design, actually thinking about your control system first is really important because I've played first-person shooters on my mobile, and it is a horrible experience. And personally,
Mm.
I cannot play. I'm a Twitch player, not as in on Twitch, but I'm very twitchy when I play. And using a controller, I just can't handle it if I'm playing a first-person shooter. And the same when in third person, if I've got the ability to aim using the mouse, I will choose it every single time. I just cannot handle it. But designing a game with your control system in mind is so important, because if your character requires 30 different buttons to push, it's a flight simulator or Elite Dangerous, something along those lines. Suddenly you've you have got to dumb it down if you want it to be available on a controller. And if you want it
There's a
on
really
mobile,
interesting video
oh,
for a few years back from Game Maker's Toolkit about do controllers limit the kinds of games you can make?
interesting.
And Mark talks quite interestingly about the sort of the history of the handheld controller and what it's really good for. And the fact that most shooters and racing games have kind of standardized the controls,
Hmm.
which they don't really need to. But I remember when we were working on Mag Racer and you were like, yeah, accelerate needs to be right trigger. And I don't use the controller enough for that to have, I mean, I'm happy with it being A or whatever. Um,
But yeah,
but there's kind of a standard thing, but there's some things they're really bad at. So it's important to sort of look at the hardware, which is one of the two things I was going to look at. Whether it's is this a console game? Is this a PC game? And by PC, I'm not. I'm including Windows, Mac, and Linux. I mean personal computer as opposed to console, right? Um, there's also how do you want the player to feel? Because there are times where a really frantic, unintuitive experience is the game.
yeah.
I'm thinking of Space Team on mobile. Did I ever play Space Team with you? It's
I
a free
think
game. You should check it
I
out.
think so. Yes.
Okay, so you can play 2 to, I think, 8 people, and you're all going to fly a ship together as a space team. And what happens is, as you go through the levels, you have a randomly generated console which will start falling apart. So you have to kind of swing things back together. So you're all holding out your phones. And then each of you will get instructions. And it'll be things like depolarize the flim flam. Is literally what it will say. The
Yeah.
problem is that
Brilliant.
may or may not be on your screen. And if it isn't, then the other person who has it. So it's a bunch of people trying to shout at each other and then realizing, oh, wait, that's on me. Um,
Yeah.
that kind of chaos and the fact that controls are different every time and make no sense, that makes sense, right? That's a game designed around bad controls, and that can work fine.
I remember the one of the first times that I ever played on a friend's PS1. I mean, we are going back many years now. But there was a quick time event where you had to press triangle and then square, and the last controller that I had used was like a NES controller. After that, I was on PC, and then I was around the friends. But it was going so quick that
Yeah.
by the time I looked down to work out which one was triangle or circle or whatever, I was like, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. And so you can actually alienate people from your game just because they're not familiar with the controller. I mean, I bet there are plenty of people out there. So I presume the PS5 or PS4 controller's the same. That these two joysticks, you can push them down. There's a button underneath there,
Mm.
and so just having it.
Although it's actually often really hard to push it down without moving the analog stick. The same problem I have with the middle mouse button.
I,
It's
I
a really awkward control.
I had a really old Xbox controller that I was using initially with a PC. I was playing a game where pushing one of those buttons down was a quick action to turn 180. But
Mm.
because it was an old loose controller, when I'd be frantically running around and just whoop 180, whoop 180.
You're away. Yeah.
Okay.
So Horheim mentions that first controller they used was a Kempson joystick playing Barbarian in the Amiga 500. I remember Barbarian on the Atari ST, and I remember every single game, almost every single game, was joystick.
I had one of those joysticks. Yes, I mean
I did too.
it's almost like I wouldn't say a throw over, but it came from the arcade scene where you'd
But even like there are arcades that had different control systems,
well
twin
they
stick
had
shooters,
yeah.
Marble Madness with that trackpad thing. There were shooting games, there were driving games, they had steering wheels. But for some reason, there was a period in which every game was controlled by the joystick, whether or not that made sense. There was a
Mm.
whole bunch of sports games, things like triathlon and all the rest of it,
Going
where
back
in order
there.
to win, you had to waggle the joystick as fast as you could. What does that mean? It means hammering left to right as fast as you could, while your friend next to you was doing the same thing.
Let me guess. It's sponsored by the joystick industry.
You went through so many joysticks with that.